Today we're in London for the press junket for the Marvel Deadpool and Wolverine film. And I'm going to show you how I made this cake and cookies for it. So I started with the cookie cutters. I had to try and create my own cookie cutter shape. I did have a heart, but it's not allowing for this little bit up here. So I used a petal cutter, or I tried. I actually couldn't cut through it to get the shape I wanted, so I ended up ditching this and having to cut them all out by hand. Now guys, I do have a recipe and a video on making the gingerbread, which is over on my channel, so I'll put a link to that in the corner. Now they didn't take a huge amount of time to bake. I think they were in the oven for about 10 minutes each, but I did have to make quite a lot of them. So I needed 80. I thought I'd best make extra just in case it went wrong, which, you know, and also I ate some. Also, I need to mark on where I'm going to ice on these cookies. So I created a template. So I just drew it in Procreate using the image that I'd been sent. And then the Cricut machine cuts this out for me. It was just going to be easier than me drawing everyone out by hand to make sure that each one was the same. So I used an edible pen. So you can use these for food. They are completely food safe, but it took a while. It gives me the lines I want, but I've got a lot more of these to do, so I need a quicker way of doing it. So I swapped to using an airbrush. Now, the only thing is the airbrush did give me thicker lines. I also managed to spray it all over my fingertips. So you can see the difference between the two. I think the pen one actually looks nicer, but the airbrush was quicker. So now I need to make some royal icing for these cookies. It starts off quite thick. I actually used the Saracino one where you just add water, and then I added some color. So I made more than just yellow. We needed a few different colors for this one, but at first it is too thick. So I have to water it down just so it's a little bit thinner, so it runs to more of a flooding consistency for cookies. Those of you that are good with cookies will probably know a lot more than me about different consistencies of the royal icing. So I started with an outline in grey. I did a few of these. It actually got easier the more I did. I was a little bit out of practice at first because I haven't done any cookies for a long time, or I haven't had to ice them for a long time anyway. So yeah, just going all the way around. I didn't let them fully set, but I let them kind of just set on the surface, and then I started filling in the color with the yellow that I'd made earlier, which is quite a runny consistency. And then I went on to do the red and the black. The black was an absolute nightmare to color. It took so much food coloring. I mean, look how nice and glossy it looks at this stage though. But if you ate one of these, it did kind of turn your tongue a little bit black because of the huge amount of food coloring that I did have to put in that black icing. And I wish that nice gloss would stay, but obviously when they dry, it dulls down a little bit. I had to speed up the drying process. I actually put them in my bread proving drawer in the kitchen as well. And then once they had dried, I just went around the outline of the eye with the edible black pen again. So they're done, they're out the way. Let's move on to the cake, the main thing for the event. So the client had an idea or knew that they wanted the two hands making the love heart sign, but I just had to draw it out to show them what it would look like or roughly look like. And then I started with a big board. I drew on there where the hands are going to go, the center line, so I knew where to divide it in half, the little kind of heart shape. I did create templates for that, and then I also cut the two hand shapes out in thin card that will go underneath this cake. Now, I would love to tell you I baked the cake myself, guys, but I didn't. I just bought it ready-made from Sweet Success. But we're going for a vanilla one and a chocolate one. And I'll put links below the video to everything that I've used as well, so you can see everything I've used. So for Deadpool's hand, we've gone for chocolate cake with some red buttercream in the middle. Now, it actually gets a little bit darker, does that colour, the longer you kind of leave it to develop in there. So the red was a little bit stronger afterwards. And obviously we've got some yellow in Wolverine's as well. We want the second layer of cake on. I'm just using my hand for guidance for like how much to kind of cut off and the shape. Because obviously when you're looking at an image, you can tell a little bit the shape, but it's not the same as looking at something like 3D in real life. So once I've carved them to the shape, so nice and rounded, kind of around the arms and rounding off the fingers, I covered the whole thing in chocolate ganache. Now, it's a bit messy at first, but I'm going to smooth over it with this flexible smoother. It's, again, very messy. I could have put gloves on for this, really. And then while the ganache is setting, I am going to ice the board. I'm going to use my leftover royal icing. So I've got the grey and black left from the biscuits or cookies, and we're just going to scrape over that. We want it to kind of look a bit like a wall or concrete-y texture. Now, once it's dried, I've put on a little bit of dust too. Now, I realised I call them biscuits, but I think other countries might call them cookies. So when I say biscuits, guys, I mean cookies. But I am going to stick those hands on there. Now, before I start icing them, just going to have a little look at the costume. So it's got a lot of texture, so I think it's really important that we do get the texture in this fondant. So I'm using ready coloured fondant just to make my life a little bit easier. And I'm going to do bit by bit with this. So rather than covering the whole arm, I'm going to work on kind of a section at a time. Gone quite thick with the black here. And just using texture mats really to impress into the fondant and just wrapping that carefully around there. Now, sometimes I did push out the texture a little bit by accident with my hands when I was smoothing it. And sometimes I didn't have texture mats that had the right texture, so I had to try and kind of create the texture by hand. Let's have a look. The Wolverine one also has some texture. So again, I found another impression mat that was the closest I could find to the texture on Wolverine's gloves. And also some nice stitching lines in there. And then I'm just using my template to follow along, kind of cutting it into pieces as I put each piece of fondant on there. I need to move that bit of blue off the hand. Then next I'm going to work on the frame. So the frame I have just used fondant for, and I've kept half yellow, half red. And now that's on, I'm going to work on the lettering. So again, I've just got some thick fondant, or you could use modeling paste, which will dry quicker or give you a firmer kind of finish. So I cut out the templates around these letters in the icing, and then I just needed to add some dust and flick on a bit of colour. Again, food colouring all over my fingers. They were just stained throughout this video, my fingers. A little bit of hand painting just for the final details. Now I could have just done this on edible print and put it on, but it wouldn't have given me that nice 3D effect. Also just added a bit of coloured dust to the frame before we add the lettering on there. Just make sure I line that up. And then again, using edible food colours, this is just white powder mixed with some clear alcohol, and just paint that on for the background, and white edible pen. And now I'm going to paint like the gold or brassy bits on Deadpool's glove. So it's a mix of the gold edible powder with some confectioner's glaze, which is like edible varnish. Now I mix the two together because when I paint them on, when it dries, it's a less powdery finish. Whereas if I just use the powder on its own, it sometimes smudges and goes on everything. Now I'm adding some shading. Again, this is just black edible powder colour mixed with some clear alcohol. Just really diluted down so that it flows into the texture and makes it look really nice and shaded. Add some highlights with some white colour. And all the food colours are edible, guys. Just darken any bits where we need to as well. If you have like a fairly dry brush with just a bit of powder on as well, you can just catch the surface of the texture, which gives it some nice highlights. And I think this looks quite nice with the cookies, so let's get this down to London.
We're at the press junket, the Marvel Deadpool and Wolverine film, to set up the cake. So let's set it up.
So setting up the cake was fairly simple when I got there, but I did have to create my own kind of cake stand to put it on. I wanted it to stand at a bit of a slope rather than sitting flat. I just thought it looked nicer that way. And of course it was put on a table with my cookies that I made, and then a selection of like red and yellow sweets, which looked really cool. There were some really cool photo ops while we were there, and even better still, the actual costumes from the films of Deadpool and Wolverine. So I was really lucky to be able to see these. And you will have noticed that they have claws. My cake doesn't. The client wanted to make sure there were no weapons on the cake. And in case you're wondering, this is Richard making the most of the photo ops. He's the guy that's usually at the other side of the camera that you don't usually see. But yeah, the whole thing was just, it was amazing. It was themed so well. They had lots of different rooms, all lockers, stickers, so much merch there, even the cushions. Now I am really excited about seeing this film as well. So hopefully I'll get to see that in the next few days when it is out. Also a guy there making Deadpool and Wolverine themed cocktails, which I can tell you were actually really nice. They were mocktails. More merch. And do you guys have a favourite? Do you prefer Deadpool or Wolverine? Or is that a daft question to ask? Like, who would win in a fight, Deadpool or Wolverine? Also, the dog was there as well, though I didn't get to meet the dog.
Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this one. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this one.
If you enjoyed this video, guys, you can check out my other Deadpool cake videos as well, using the links in the corner of the screen now.